Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. This is a press conference for the Cannabis Wise Association and Marijuana Justice. And people have some thoughts about the pending legislation that's passing through the House and the Senate. Both of the bills need to go into conference, and there's still opportunity to make some fixes that are important to these advocates. Please take it away.
Hello and welcome to the members of the press. We do want to first congratulate Virginia on moving forward the process of regulating an adult use market. We want to thank very special thanks to our patrons, Senator Aird, Senator Rouse, Senator Lucas, and Delegate Krizik. We appreciate their past and their continued work with this in the community and making this the best bill that we can for Virginia. So to the press, thank you so much for coming today to hear our recommendations on how to make the bill better. And I'll hand it off to Barbara Biddle. Oh, sorry.
Hi, my name is Max Jackson, founder of Cannabis Wise Guys, a consulting firm that bridges the create fault line disconnect between operational reality, investors, and policymakers. In October, I testified before Virginia's Joint Committee on Retail Cannabis on market structure and market implementation timelines. From the day that a cannabis cultivation license is issued, it takes 18 to 36 months before a single plant will hit a retail shelf. Financing, property permits, construction, inspections, and your first grow and your first harvest is the clock. This bill starts that clock in January or November or January 1. And that is not enough time to build out this infrastructure. This bill will hand the existing medical operators a 2 to 3 year head start to build brand familiarity, strengthen supply chains, and lock in retail relationships before a single independent Virginia cultivator can get a plant in the ground. From the day that a license is issued, it takes 18 to 36 months to produce retail-ready product. Medical operators converting to the adult use market don't face any of this time. They already have the facilities and brand recognition. By the time an independent Virginia farmer gets licensed, funds a full facility, builds it out, and grows their product, medical operators will have been selling for 2 to 3 years. Retail analytics from headset data show that this pattern repeats. In New Jersey, nearly 2 years into adult use sales, medical conversions and their in-house brands still control nearly 70% of the flower market. That's how durable a structural head start is. It took years of independent competition just to begin unwinding it. Virginia should not expect a different outcome. Virginia still has the time to get this right. A rush timeline does not create a competitive market. It creates a 2 to 3 year head start for medical operators while independents are still breaking ground.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Biddle. I'm the owner of District Hemp Botanicals, a hemp retail and manufacturing operation that's been around since 2017. I'm also the president of the Cannabis Small Business Association, an organization meant to give small businesses a voice. As small business owners with locations in Loudoun County, Prince William County, and Washington, D.C., I know how zoning and local ordinances can heavily impact logistics and start times. As written, the bill's zoning and buffer zones unintentionally exclude many small businesses from entering the market. 1,000 square foot setbacks severely limits viable locations in Richmond, Northern Virginia, and other urban areas. Small businesses do not have the resources as well-funded operations to secure and sit on scarce compliant real estate as we wait to receive a license. Without adjustment, many legal businesses will be excluded before the market even opens, and the time it will take to adjust local zoning might completely limit them altogether, given the current license caps. Separately, for micro businesses, one location will not work at all. Each micro business needs to have at least 2 locations to separate the cannabis farm, the processing, from the retail. Zoning will be impossible to achieve with no combination at wholesale and retail zoning in most localities. Reasonable zoning standards determine whether or not legalization creates opportunity or exclusion. And with that, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Grant Redfern, the owner of Redfern Hemp.
Hello, everyone. My name is Graham Redfern from Caroline County. I farm in Caroline County. I have a food safety licensed commercial kitchen in Richmond. I wholesale to the compliant hemp market right now. I sell online to all 50 states, and I run a brick and mortar retail location in Caroline off 95. The current legislation and the logistical structure of this legislation does not reflect the real world agricultural and business timelines, especially knowing that from farm to sale, it's not an overnight process. I cannot grow a product and process it for wholesale and retail sales without it within the timeline proposed in either of these bills. Cultivation requires significant upfront investment and long lead times. Planting cycles cannot be accelerated to meet arbitrary regulatory deadlines. Farmers cannot legally prepare the crop without a license, and until then, you're going to create a structural disadvantage and also honestly make it criminalize the farmer. Build out, hiring, zoning, training, compliance, financing, all of that is going to take time. Independent operators can't build $1 million facility overnight, so you got to figure it out. And legalization should reflect real world timelines, and Virginia farmers and Virginia businesses, small businesses, should be able to succeed just like everybody else. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michael Carter Jr. I'm a fifth generation farmer at my farm in Orange County, Virginia called Carter Farms. In the past, I've been a hemp grower. I've been an advocate for the 32,000 small farms in the state of Virginia. And I want us to understand the state of agriculture in Virginia. In 2025, last year, we lost 400 farms in the state of Virginia. That's one per day, a little over one per day. We're losing our farms, and we're looking for certain products to help keep our farms going and growing. And hemp has been one of those, hemp and marijuana has been one of those opportunities for our farmers that we need to secure the ability in the marketplace to stay a farm, to not sell their farms to development, to other places that we're not allowed those farms to grow. The current legislation, the way it's written, is not a benefit for small farmers. It's not a benefit for big farmers. It's a benefit for corporate farmers. And we're not going to have a benefit or a industry where farmers can actually grow and thrive. And we're going to lose more farms. Probably in 2026, instead of 400 farms, we'll lose 800 farms this year. Because we're not giving our farmers a chance to grow and take advantage of these marketplaces. 1,100 farmers applied for hemp licenses in 2018. Now we're down to 100 that can apply for licenses to grow marijuana. This is not fair to our farmers. It's not fair to those who continue to grow products and produce and proteins on the back of those farms to continue to grow Virginia. So we want to stand and say we need to push those start dates back to at least 2027 to allow the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Resources, Consumer Services to develop protocols. In 2021, I served on the adult use marijuana working group under Northam's administration to give farmer perspective. In this past session, there's been a very limited farmer perspective to guide these bills, and it shows because we're fighting against corporate interest over the values of Virginia small farms.
Thank you. I like to have my people behind me. My name is Chelsea Higgs Wise. I'm the Executive Director of Marijuana Justice, and I'm proud to see this legislation that's based and righting the wrongs of the past, of safety, of equitable opportunity continue to move forward. And we've always been focused on day one equity of small business inclusion, as well as appropriate zoning and a start date that makes sense. But today my comments must focus on our dangerous upcoming and the concerns around ABC merger with CCA. The question is very simple. Will we regulate cannabis on a model of failure or a future of public policy and equity? Marijuana Justice's long stance is that ABC should not be part of regulating cannabis. Joining ABC and CCA is not an administrative efficiency. It is truly a dangerous institutional move that jeopardizes our public well-being. An early but popular legalization slogan was regulate like alcohol. Now, 2026, the health scholars are saying that alcohol regulation is a model of a public health failure. And that is because alcohol-related consequences are still one of the leading preventable causes of death here in the United States. And that's because ABC's priority is revenue and license enforcement. We call that regulatory capture, when the regulators are captured by the logic of the market and are losing the true cost of our humanity. The data proves that the fundamental misalignment in agencies is not just here in Virginia. It is a cultural problem that's happening across the nation. A national study found that 65% of regulatory agencies run by alcohol do not include public health in the mission statement. Locally, here in Virginia, our ABC not only excludes public health from the mission statement, but in 2025, the annual report, they mentioned public health exactly 0 times. Alcohol regulators were found 40% more likely to engage and collaborate with law enforcement agencies over public health agencies. And that means that it's more strict on license enforcement and losing sight of proactive public health initiatives that could actually help save lives. In a stark contrast, cannabis regulatory boards specifically are twice as likely than ABC to publicly collaborate with public health agencies. Our own study in 2020 by JLARC stated that a new agency focused on cannabis could bring better business opportunities for our industry as well as equity. So by merging CCA and ABC, we risk losing that balance. We're creating a system that will inevitably bring disproportionate enforcement, as well as also neglecting our public health and our equity goals. So I urge lawmakers, stop this dangerous merger. Legislate the Cannabis Control Authority with the independent power that is always intended, and let us reject a model of failure and legalize Virginia right by choosing a future of public health and equity, that we regulate responsible cannabis in Virginia, and let's keep ABC out of cannabis. Thank you so much, and I will pass it back to Barbara for questions. Thank you all for attending. We're going to open up the floor for questions now.
Chelsea, you mentioned the potential failure of a merger between the ABC and CCA. Can you give us a hypothetical illustration of what a public health intervention under a CCA independent agency might look like, as opposed to a law enforcement one, which I presume we're all sort of familiar with the way it works with the ABC stores. What would that look like, and how is it different?
I want to be clear that a CCA enforcement will never exclude law enforcement. It's about how we are choosing our resources to collaborate. And so a public health collaboration would bring much more preventable programs based on education, public campaigns, as well as linking people to services and bringing more education. Because right now, many people are still confused on what is even legal. Law enforcement then just starts to criminalize people. And unfortunately, that means they lose access to the resources, the collateral consequences that we know of losing their housing, their job, and those pieces would not be at a high risk if we saw more public health interventions and under a CCA. We're looking at what's happening across the country, and taking a specific expert view on cannabis is truly the way to have a safer consumer market and protect our young ones and our families moving forward that are now having a different level of access to the plant.
I see. So would an individual shop have such public health information, on site, or is it a call instead of to law enforcement, a call to a public health authority from the shop? How, I'm just interested in how it kind of works out. You said preventative things, and presumably because alcohol is an addictive substance as well, but you would say there's not much intervention on that side of things from a retail standpoint.
And so we're really looking at not only just license enforcement, like license violations, also looking at what a public health violation would be as far as the packaging being labeled wrong and having more education, not just for the business owner, but also for the consumer about what they're reading. Perhaps it was a confusing regulation that we need to then look at. And also we offer the opportunity for more conversations between the consumer as well as the business owner to the regulatory body before we start criminalizing the business owners as well as the consumers. What we saw that was really concerning is something that happened in the Senate courts this year, is where everyone is ready just to line everything like alcohol with cannabis. And that would bring penalties that we saw for just growing a plant more of being equal to almost the penalties of murder. So just having the mindset of lining things up with alcohol, we lose the idea of choices, education, and really, I'm a social worker, so I look at meeting the person where they're at. Let's meet the businesses where they're at versus one blanket meets all of just criminalization. And so it really be coming with the public health initiative. How does this help the health? How does this affect the consumer, and not just you violated your license agreement?
Chelsea, you just mentioned the penalties that the Senate ultimately rejected. Are you concerned just about what the final bill will have in terms of the penalties for distribution, possession, illegal possession, so forth?
I know Marijuana Justice and everyone behind me is very thankful that the Senate removed those penalties. But the truth is, in 2024, they put them in there as well, and the Senate Finance had to take them out. I'm very hopeful that they will not appear back in this bill this year, but I am very worried that they will continue to come back every year, just like we've seen the repeal of the smell of marijuana being a reason not to stop search or seize. We've seen legislators come back every single year since 2020 trying to repeal that, and we don't want that fight. And if we align ABC and CCA, it'll give them even more reason to criminalize everyone to a point of just a new prohibition era here in Virginia.
So this is for the farmers, but I like to distinguish corporate farming and large farmers, and what would help the Virginia large farmers get into this? And I tag on to that. The Attorney General in Ohio is filing suit against these corporate farmers, and they operate here in Virginia. Do you think our AG should also take action?
I think the AG should take action, but it needs to be done by the Virginia Department of Agriculture first. You got to understand the plant, the crop, the procedures, and what it entails in terms of security, especially for like large scale growers and small scale growers to maintain those. It's a slippery slope, which is why you shouldn't start so quickly, because we need to iron out all those details so that innocent everyday farmers aren't going to jail for growing a crop. We had the same issue with hemp farmers when they were growing back in 2018. We had a THC level that had to be between 0 and 0.3% THC. And if it was over 0.3%, the government would come in and destroy your crops. And for farmers, that was devastating, because the farmer can't determine how much THC a plant's going to have. And those factors are way out of the farmer's controls. So when you start enforcing those things without understanding the dynamics of it, you put the farmers at risk. And when those farmers lose those crops, that's money lost. That's a season lost. That now, again, you have the spiral effect where they've lost revenue, they've invested, they've got nothing back in return, and then 5 years later, they got to close down because they haven't generated enough revenue to sustain them. So we need to take our time with it, figure out all the specifics, and the Attorney General will be part of it, but they shouldn't be the lead on it, in my opinion.
And I'm going to just say one other piece that right before our next question to that about the state's stance on this is that we know we will probably be sued. Once we pass this legislation, someone is going to sue us. More than likely, a larger MSO will sue the Commonwealth because of some type of provisions. We're watching it all over the country. So asking, should the AG be involved? The answer is yes, because we should also be involved in a preventable. We should start looking proactively at what our law says, how we can defend it, and make sure that even if we have to defend it from the inside with some of our operators, that we are set and ready to do so.
What's MSO?
multi-state operators. So the multi-state operators right now are our medical pharmaceutical processors because they operate all across the country. And every single one of our medical operators right now are part of an Ohio lawsuit for antitrust violations and anti-competition violations. And so we have been saying all of this time, this is why we do not want to give them a large benefit right now. We need to take our time and all Virginia because we don't want the same type of lawsuit happening in our industry as well.
So what is the optimal start date? Mr. Carter, you mentioned 27. Did you mean 28? Because it is January 1st.
If the start date can be November 2027, at least we can actually start growing it in May, which would be the ideal time. And we can actually meet the market by then and also give VDACS an opportunity to develop the standards that farmers will be able to utilize so we're not growing illegally, unknowingly. Because what happens in the past is that we kind of they're building the plane as we're flying it. And in this situation, that's really, really, really risky. Ideal start date for me would be November 27th. Ideally, November 2028 would be really good, but I'm sure I'm pushing it this minute.
Forgive me if I get any of these details wrong. If I'm not mistaken, so legislators legalized it several years ago, and for a lot of Virginia voters, they've been waiting for this. They want to go into a 7-Eleven and buy marijuana yesterday, and now you're asking them to wait another year, 2 years. What do you say to marijuana smokers or consumers out there that they wanted this done yesterday?
I'm also a consumer, and I want to make sure that we have quality products on this market, not just the Budweisers. I want to make sure that there is room and opportunity for quality, small-scale artisan flower to be on the market. And so this is more so for making sure that consumers have a choice and aren't limited in quality.
Could you speak to the approach to license caps for retailers and other businesses that would operate the market, or the response to the current approach?
We're fighting for opportunity for everybody, and we understand that there is a fine line to walk. Legislators don't want marijuana stores on every corner. However, we're having to balance that with what does that mean for everybody that doesn't have a license. And so I think we need more time to really assess that and to find a better compromise. But as it stands, we do feel that the 350 might be prohibited and something that needs to be looked at.
Is there a number of ABC stores that would sort of give the demographics or the population in terms of, what saturation looks like or sub-saturation, however they determine it? Is that kind of a model to guide?
They do want to model it off the current ABC model. However, I'd like to also bring up that there's almost over 30,000 regular ABC licenses outside of the 400 ABC stores. So imagine if you couldn't find beer and wine anywhere and you were just limited to liquor at your ABC store. I think those are something that we need to consider.
And there are 405 ABC stores right now in Virginia, and they wanted to make sure we did not pass that number. And I think part of the 350 number that they've chosen right now is also to ensure particularly counties that maybe didn't want to have this retail market, that they wouldn't be oversaturated. But we've heard from the patrons and from the regulators that this could be something that we continue to look at and evaluate to meet based on the demand.
Just to double check, so based on the current law stuff last May, you could not grow marijuana or what would be sold in stores eventually, right? You couldn't start growing it last May.
No. That'll be the last question for today. Thank you guys so much for your time and your attention to this matter, and I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.